John Davidson. So, okay. All right. Today's training is probably, out of all the trainings we're going to do, if you're going to pay attention to one of them, pay attention to this one. It kind of summarizes the theory behind our program. I'm going to go through all the steps of kind of what a normal kid goes through who doesn't end up having sexual issues. I'm going to go through how a sex offender usually gets to the point where they are, and then we're going to talk about how to fix them. This is Danny Erickson. He's the president of operations of YHA, and he's going to just help kind of with some of the demonstration stuff. So, this is not a theory that's new or anything real crazy out there that's that we've really come up with. The thing about it is we actually really use it. It's taught a lot. It's explained in a million different ways, but as you can see, it's going to be more common sense than really a theory. So it really should never be outdated. It should really work forever, and it's worked for us for 18 years with lots of kids, and we intend on sticking with it. Anyways, when you're raising kids, the from 1 to 5, there's some things that happen during those years. Sometimes reactive attachment disorders kick in when they're neglected, and if you've read about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they're not getting their basic needs, then they have a hard time progressing. They have a hard time trusting people. But in this case, we're going to kind of just say that all these kids kind of got to kindergarten about the same. Most kindergartners, before they go to school, think that they're everybody's kind of loving on them, giving them everything they want, and they kind of think that the world revolves around them. And then they walk into that school, and one of the first things that happens to them is they start comparing themselves to the other kids in every way possible, from the type of car that other kids get dropped off in to kids being more athletic at recess, understanding the material like math or art or whatever better. So the kids start getting frustrated. And so this is what a normal kid, like if Danny was my kid and he came home from school one day and he was distraught and upset, most parents would pick up on it. He wouldn't even have to say he had a rough day. Secondly, they would sit him down and say, "What's going on?" And this is where the parenting, this is where one of the biggest shifts happens. He'll say, first he'll have the trust to say, hey mom, I at recess got picked last on the basketball team. And her job really is to reframe things in his head so that he can go back out into the world not feeling like the loser he is. Now, one of the worst things you can do for some of these kids is to just continue to tell them that they can accomplish anything they want in the world. I wish that slogan would go completely away, because it isn't true. And it gives kids like the feeling when they don't accomplish what they want that it was their fault, when really genetics play a huge role, environment, everything. So say Danny got a F on a math test. Comes home, he's upset. Parents sit him down. They say, did you study? Did you try hard? If you didn't, then we need to up that a little bit. If not, math may not be your thing, but we're going to have to maybe get you some help so that you can get through it, because everybody needs to at least learn the basics. But look how good you are at other things. Look how good you are at art. Look how good you are at, and that's a parent's reframing a kid's brain to better deal with it and to better walk back into school the next day. And so that is what a healthy kid goes through. Our kids typically come home from a day of school. Now, you don't have to know much about this field to realize socially they're not that great. So they do have really rough days of school from the very beginning. Come home from school and they're upset. And they had this exact same experience as, say, Danny had. The difference is how the parents handled it. One, if they even picked up on it. If the mom's depressed and asleep on the bed and doesn't even pick up on it, or she's off working and never has a chance to talk to the kid, that kid inside of his head, day after day after day, is getting reinforced that he's kind of a loser, that he's kind of dumb, maybe he's kind of worthless. Maybe he goes over to his friend's house, and when he shows up to his friend's house, the mom goes, "Hey guys, how was breakfast?" or "How was school? Do you guys want a sandwich?" And he's thinking, "This has never ever happened to me. What's the difference? Am I not as valuable as this kid?" And so those things get so imprinted in these kids' heads negatively. They're called core beliefs. And we're going to do this. This is kind of a demonstration to show. So these are a pair of sunglasses. Or not sunglasses, but we're going to put what some possible core beliefs, negative ones, could be. So it could be ugly, dumb, worthless, non-athletic, even poor, whatever. So Danny now is going to be our kid that comes home every day and doesn't have anybody reframing these things in his head, putting them in there right, and starts to develop these negative core beliefs. So you can see this says just like ugly, dumb, whatever on it. So now he's going to put those on, and he now is going to walk out the door every day with seeing through those lenses. I'm dumber than most of these kids. I'm not LDS, or I am LDS, or I'm not Catholic, or I'm from a different race, or whatever. And they see themselves with all these negative core beliefs. So the next thing that happens are called trigger events. They'll see something that triggers one of those negative core beliefs, and then the feeling after is super frustrating for them. So, say he's out for recess the next day, he wants to play basketball, he doesn't get picked on a team. That's a trigger event for his core belief that he is not athletic. He gets a math test back again, it's an F. That triggers his core belief that he's not smart. Hanging out with girls, the girls give a lot more attention to his friends. That triggers his core belief that he's ugly. And so these kids are walking around and they're getting triggered all the time because of all these negative core beliefs. And in some terms in psychology, they call that a zero state, where the kid reverts back to all those horrible feelings that were created as he was growing up. I'm dumb, I'm dumb, I'm dumb, I'm dumb. And the kid will do anything to get rid of those feelings. Let's go back to a healthy kid. A healthy kid has a bad day, gets an F, goes and talks to his parents. His parents start teaching him to reframe, but then they also teach him different coping skills of how to deal with it. And that's the next step, is how are you going to cope with these trigger events and get yourself back on track again. Okay, well, our kids, I'm going to use this. This is going to be their bag of tricks. This is going to be the copings that they learned probably from their parents or their family members or their friends. One real good one is alcohol. That's a coping that they'll use. Sometimes they'll use drugs. Sometimes they'll use vandalism. It's a can of spray paint. Sometimes they'll fight. This is a butterfly knife. Sometimes they'll use pornography. This is a camera. This is a computer. So, let's back up here. Kid walks out the door, gets triggered because of his core beliefs, dips into his bag of tricks, and is, I don't think this matters, but dips into his bag of tricks, and these are the copings that he has. Now, most of these kids are going to know that these copings are bad. They're not right. They're, to go spray paint somebody's house, they know the difference between right and wrong. So how does doing something like that make them feel better? Okay, this is where the final term that I'm going to teach is the thinking errors kick in. A thinking error is what you do to make yourself feel good about doing something bad. If you start a diet, the next day when you show up to work, somebody brings donuts. How quick your brain can figure out a way to feel good about doing something bad. Well, I actually ran an extra 20 minutes, or I took the stairs instead of the elevator. Whatever, your brain gets really good at making yourself feel good about doing something bad. So those thinking errors allow these kids to do things that they know are wrong, but that they justify. So some of them, here's the thinking errors. Some of them that they do is blame other people, they catastrophize, they minimize, they do black and white thinking, which kind of means everything's either bad or good. They justify it in some way to make that feeling go away. So let's do this whole cycle. So Danny now has his core beliefs that he's looking through that cause trigger events. Here's his bag of tricks that goes on here. And then he's got his core beliefs. These are little magic wands. I mean, these aren't core beliefs, these are thinking errors. Okay, so this is exactly how these kids function. Let's say Danny is sitting in class and he gets his test back that says an F. Triggers his dumb core belief. He gets mad. He goes into zero state. He feels really bad about it and really mad at the kid who said it. So he starts figuring out a way to cope with it. Well, he goes into his bag of tricks, and what is there? Well, fighting is a good one for him. So he starts thinking, I'm going to punch this kid in the face right when we walk out the door. How do I feel good about punching this kid in the face? Well, I'm going to use my thinking errors. I'm going to say, had he not made fun of me, I wouldn't have punched him. It's his fault. Plus, getting punched in the face, minimized, isn't as bad as making everybody laugh at me for how dumb I am. So he's doing his thinking errors. Right when class ends, walks up to the kid in the hall where everybody can see it, punches him in the face. If the kid falls down, there's blood on his face, whatever. Danny's now going to have to continue to use some more thinking errors. Well, he deserved it. Well, it wouldn't have happened had he not said anything, It's not my fault. Makes him to the point where he feels good again. So, this is the entire cycle. I'm going to see if we can, this is the entire cycle. Kid's walking along, normal. He gets triggered. That causes him to feel zero state, feel like garbage. Then he starts maybe fantasizing a little bit about what he's going to do to get out of it. I'm going to go spray paint their house. I'm going to go. Then he starts to think of what coping he's going to use. Then he's going to start using thinking errors to justify these copings. Then he's going to act out. Whatever he's going to do, he's going to do it. Then he's going to use more thinking errors. And then he's going to feel good again. So that is the entire cycle. And it goes over and over. Now, switch this from a fight to something sexual. Say Danny is at a dance with 3 of his buddies.
two girls walk up and ask Danny to dance. I don't ask Danny to dance, they ask his buddies to dance. That would trigger one of Danny's core beliefs that would be maybe that he's ugly. So, he has a trigger event, triggers his ugly core belief about himself. He feels like crap. He sees his buddies out there dancing or whatever. He starts thinking, this isn't fair. My buddies are out there hugging on some girl, and I'm standing here by myself. That isn't fair. Starts to do a victim stance, feel bad for himself. You know what maybe I'm going to do? I'm going to just start brushing up against people. That's called frauderism. It's a big part of almost all of our kids' cycles. They start off with something like that. I'm going to bump up next to this girl in the school classroom. I'm going to make... How easy is that to justify? Okay, so he starts thinking about it. It's going to feel good. I'm going to use thinking errors. How many times does she get bumped? She'll never even notice, minimizing it. I wouldn't be doing this had these girls asked me to dance in the first time. Blaming, catastrophizing, victim stance. Those are all thinking errors that make him feel good about the way he's going to act out, which is going to do frottage. He bumps into her butt, whatever. Kind of knows it's bad, uses more thinking errors, gets to the point where he feels good again. So that cycle gets started. Then it keeps going. I mean, this is a kind of a thing that isn't going to stop. The only thing that really is going to stop most of the time, or change most of the time, is he's going to be able to go through these steps a little faster, and the acting out a lot of times gets worse. So he started off with frottage. Maybe he gets really into pornography. How does he justify that? Well, I never get to meet girls the real way. It's not my fault my parents were ugly and created me ugly. It's not my fault that whatever. And he keeps feeling okay. This is just step by step how they get to the point. Then the next step could be that I'm going to start looking through windows. How does he justify that? He has a bad day at school with some girls, they make fun of him, whatever. He starts thinking, well, I'm going to go watch this girl undress at night. That's how I'm going to cope. How does he justify it? Well, she shouldn't have left her window open. Once again, I wouldn't be here if I was ugly. Once again, if anybody taught me social skills, I wouldn't be doing this. As the girl's undressing, he's saying, I think she knows I'm out here. There's no way that she would be undressing like that if she didn't know I was out here. He's just justifying so he doesn't feel bad about what he's doing. He keeps getting better and better at these thinking errors, feeling better and better about the way he's acting out, and pretty soon the acting out becomes something horrible. So you can see how a kid goes from just a little cycle to quickly having this sexually acting out being from a rape to molesting a little kid. And they figure out ways to justify it really fast. It's a little kid. He's never going to remember it. He doesn't even know what's going on. It's not going to hurt him. Plus, I promised him a candy bar. I remember interviewing a kid one time when I said, how do you think your victim felt after you sexually abused him? And he said, I bet she was mad because I didn't actually give her the candy bar that I was going to give her. Well, that's him. That's his way of feeling okay about doing something super bad. A victim doesn't care one bit about the candy bar, but when you start talking about breaking that thinking error down, they have a really hard time with it because that's really what's making them feel okay about doing such bad stuff. So this is the entire cycle, and these are the steps the kids go through. So now we've got to talk about how to fix it. And where do you start? So you got Danny sitting here with all of these all these patterns he goes through. This is a kid that walks in the door of YHA. He's got a horrible bag of tricks. He's got a handful of thinking errors. He's got a bunch of core beliefs that are super negative, and he walks into YHA. Now, think about how hard we push a positive environment. If our staff are constantly belittling and treating these kids
bad, making fun of them, think of what that does to the core beliefs that they're looking at through every day. It makes them stronger. It makes the kid worse. So this is how, real quickly, how you take a kid that we get and get them back on their first thing that you do. Not the first thing I'm going to explain are the thinking errors. We got to challenge them. When a kid says, when a kid is in victim stance and is feeling, that probably doesn't matter, does it? So a kid's sitting there in victim stance, and most of the time in their life they've been told, or they've been taught, oh, are you okay? What's the matter? We got to teach them that doesn't work. By having a conversation. Listen, I know you're upset, I know you're frustrated, but until you can stand up and we can talk about this, I'm not going to sit down here and listen to this mope game. So when you're ready, come let me know. When they're blaming other people, blaming their parents, we've got to sit them down and say, hold fire. That is why it is so important for us to have healthy staff around these kids, because they can say, listen, your parents may not have been the best at this, but it doesn't give you the right to do the things that you did to other people. We got to take that blaming little magic wand that they use to feel good and break it. Now these kids are going to have a hard time with it. That's why in our program, so many times kids get more difficult to deal with at the first than they were when we got them. Because what you do is you're taking away what makes them feel good about what they did that was wrong. When you're starting to tell them, that girl did not want you to look at her through her window. I've had adult sex offenders almost want to fight me on that, saying, are you calling me a sicko? There's no way that she didn't know that I was there. There's no, like, that thinking error is so strong that taking those away really, really frustrates kids. In psychology, thinking errors a lot of times are called defense mechanisms. This is just a demonstration of how they really work well. If you were out in the ocean and you were on a boogie board or something and you saw a fin go by, us Utah people would freak out. We would be like, there's a shark and he's gonna eat us no matter what. Even if it was a shark, the odds of that shark biting us are so low, but why are we so freaked out? We know that. But we freak out and get out of the water and probably never go back in that vacation. But we can drive down the freeway using our knees, texting, putting on makeup, eating lunch, driving past a semi and have no fear. How did we get to the point where the most dangerous thing that we do all day causes us no fear, and then something that is really almost impossible, that's never going to happen, freaks us out? Well, it's the same thing as these sex offenders. Over and over, you have to train your brain. I've got to get to work. I have to drive on the freeway. I have to get past this. And you develop, it's so strong that you're not worried anymore about it. But you don't have to do that in the ocean, because we go there once every however many years. So every time it's going to freak us out. But if we became like a marine biologist, we would have to get used to, okay, I'm going to be around sharks. And then at one point, they probably aren't going to freak you out that much. So it's just kind of an illustration of how strong these are. And when you start taking them away from people, it really freaks them out. It's like then when you drive down the freeway and you see a horrible wreck and there might be some dead bodies, it kind of takes away that defense mechanism. You kind of forget, wow. You kind of start thinking, this is dangerous, and it freaks you out. Well, think of our kids. They're going through that over and over in this therapy process. But we have to continually do that, and our staff are the main ones who are going to do that. They're going to see the kids do the blaming, not taking accountability, justifying their behavior, minimizing. Yeah, but I only stole this, and I could have stolen more. And you got to sit them down and break that down. So, getting rid of these makes it a lot harder for these guys to go into their bag of tricks, like Danny has, and and use those bad copings. But he doesn't have any better ones. So that's the next thing that we have to do is fix his bag of tricks. So we're going to give him a new bag. You ever wonder why we take these kids fishing? You ever wonder why we take them hiking or teach them working out? Okay, so here's a heart rate monitor. This teaches them how to work out. These are copings that they use when they get into cycle and they need to get out of it. Here's some music. Music's one of the most powerful things that these kids can use. Within 3 minutes, a song can change somebody's mood completely. A lot of kids get into reading. It helps them, calm down or chill out. Religion is huge for some of these kids. Don't take it away from them. If prayer or whatever it is in their religion that they've grown up with or that they just learn about helps them calm down, deal with things better, keep it going. We do a lot of things where we teach them how to fix stuff. I helped some kids a couple weeks ago fix a sink. Every time I see them, they're talking about that sink and the experience that they had and how cool it was for them. A lot of kids journal. Some kids do art. Some one of the biggest ones is to talk to people, call friends, family, whatever, and deal with it. If you think about it, if we swap that bag out and give him a much better bag of tricks, think of what all of you are doing today. You're at work. It's not the best place you want to be. What are you thinking about? On the way home, you're thinking, I'm going to go work out when I get home. You later guys, you think I'm gonna play with my kid. My goodness, my wife, this is a coping. I don't understand it really, but she feels better just buying a Diet Coke every day. She hardly even drinks the whole thing, but it just, for whatever that, actually maybe that's a bad one. I shouldn't have said that one. But we all do them. We all have copings, and so when we're taking these kids and teaching them how to work out, snowboard, hike, camp, it's not totally because they deserve it. We're trying to teach them ways to replace some super powerful copings that they're already using. Sex is tough to beat. Drugs are tough. Alcohol is tough. When you're trying to sell a kid on, instead of taking painkillers, read a book, that's a tough sell. But the long-term advantages are obviously living a happy life, not being locked up. So anyway, we're breaking down the thinking errors. We're giving these kids a better bag of tricks. But the king of all of it that we need to undo are these negative things that he's looking through every day he walks out the door. Think of it, if we could take some of those off. Those are so deeply protected in this kid. If we can take them away, he's not going to get triggered. He doesn't need a coping for it because he's not in cycle. How do we get rid of him? How do we make a kid who feels worthless not feel worthless? How do we make a kid who feels dumb not feel dumb? And that is the thing that takes the most time, and it is the most, no kid is going to walk in and say, this is my list of negative core beliefs. Almost the opposite. When a kid feels worthless, they walk in like a tough guy. When they feel weak, they want to be Mr. Tough Guy, Mr. Gangbanger. When they feel dumb, they want to present like they know everything. And when they feel like they're the butt of every joke, what do? They make fun of people first so that they can be on the other end of it. You can almost see this list by going off exactly the opposite how these kids are acting. So how do we get to that point? How do we get to a point where you make a kid? This is the part that takes the longest. This is the part that really is the healing. This is the part that makes it so when our kids take a while at the first to start doing better, after they get it and they get some of this healing done, the therapy works forever after that. That's why the recidivism is so, I mean, there's such a successful field, because when you wrap all this stuff up, these kids really go out and excel. None of them want to be sex offenders. You know, drug and alcohol rehab is a completely different ballgame. It's still cool. It's still, socially acceptable in a lot of ways to drink it or whatever. Our kids can't. So, this is how you get rid of them. The core beliefs. I've done groups for 20 years with these kids, and I've done what I felt like was really good one-on-one sessions with them. But we have an assignment at the end that says, what was it that really changed? What was it you think that made a difference? And it surprises me every time. It's not one of my, it's never, sorry therapist, but it's never one of your groups. And it's usually not one of the sessions. It's stuff like this. I was sitting with Matt Clark. We had a busted sprinkler. We went out and tried to fix it. He took me with him. We took the whole thing apart. We put a new sprinkler on. We flipped on the switch. The sprinkler blew up and blew mud all over both of us. We turned it back off. We went to Lowe's. We bought some better parts. We put the whole thing together, turned it on, and it worked. We both gave each other high fives. What do you think that does when you have a guy like Matt Clark that these kids idolize, having a positive experience like that? What do you think it does to that core belief that's worthless? They start going, if Matt Clark cares about me, who cares about these other idiots that made fun of me in the past? Who cares about, it starts to get erased, and it starts to not only get erased, but rewritten. I'm worth something. Somebody like Matt cares about me. Another therapist, another experience that they wrote was a therapist that was sitting on a, they went snowboarding and they got stuck on the lift, and it was a huge blizzard. And this kid was sitting there with his therapist, and she was freezing and he was freezing. And the kid, that's where it clicked for him. He was like, she is willing to sit here and freeze with me, and that isn't really her job description, but she must care enough that I'm worth it. And slowly but surely, when these kids are in a positive environment where the staff are encouraging them, where the staff are helping them rewrite their negative core beliefs, breaking down their thinking errors, giving them new copings, showing them new copings, the ones that they use, different ones than I use. These kids end up really getting better and really having successful lives. And, this isn't something that's in people's blood. It's not something that, it's an easy way to explain it. People aren't born with core beliefs, and there's really not a list inside of you. But I would hope that as I was talking about this, you probably all have similar experiences where things trigger you. I grew up pretty small. Actually, so did Danny. I was a little bigger than him. He got more chicks than him too, but I was 115 pounds when I went into high school, and I hated it. And still to this day, it bothers me a little bit being around bigger guys. Even though I'm 6'3", 250, I kind of go, well, like, and my kids pick up on it. We'll be sitting in an elevator, and a guy will get on that's bigger than me, and my kids will be like, it's okay, Dad, calm down, Dad. And it's ridiculous, but it's kind of stuck in me. And if I ever really wanted to work on it, I don't see much of a point of it, but I hope that you can all see things in you that set you off, that don't set other people off because of the experiences that you've had. I hope that you can see the value of the way we treat these kids is so important as to breaking down their core beliefs. And, when we talk about 15 minutes of processing with these kids, use it. Use it to break things down. Use it to teach them, this is what works for me. You know, I heard a staff the other day give an awesome example. They said, one of my favorite things to do is always have something planned so that, you know, whether it be fishing that weekend or whatever, and they can say, today sucks, but in 3 days I'm going to be out fishing with my kid. And then you can get through it. That's an awesome coping, just to have something on the calendar that you're going to go do. So anyway, that's the whole theory behind. I hope this makes sense. I hope it makes sense why we do it this way and don't do a real punitive based model that actually sometimes shows more compliance quicker. It just doesn't work in the long run. So hopefully we can send a kid out the door with a bag of tricks, leaving his thinking errors behind, and with a new set of glasses. So here's a new set of glasses. These say on them, I'm worth something, I'm a good artist, I'm strong, I'm successful, I'm loved. Loved is a huge one. So that's the goal. Take these off, put the new ones on, and this is how we want to graduate a kid. So in a nutshell, I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that you can understand even better why our program's based. I know sometimes the staff want to feel like, yeah, but this kid deserves a punishment. If you go into punitive mode on these kids, they get more comfortable than they're used to being told they suck. They're used to being in trouble. If you want to put them on an uncharted road that they haven't been on, show them success. That's why we see kids sabotage, because they're not used to it. They never felt it before. Sometimes it freaks them out. But that's why our program's built the way it is, because in the end, it works forever instead of, you know, just while we have the kid. So that's it. John, edit this out.
Very nice.
That was 40 minutes. That's
Really?
awesome.